Act like we're just friends tonight. My ex will be there, she instructed. Okay, I said. The rain had been threatening all afternoon, hanging low and gray over the city like an unspoken argument. I stood at the bathroom mirror, adjusting a tie I'd already adjusted 6 times, watching my reflection perform the same nervous ritual over and over again. Hello friends, before I continue the story, please support the channel by becoming a subscriber and giving the video a like. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching right now. From the bedroom, I could hear Vanessa moving around, the soft rustle of fabric, the click of jewelry being clasped. We'd been getting ready in separate rooms for the past hour. A small detail that, looking back, should have told me everything I needed to know. Marcus, can you come here for a second? Her voice was casual. Too casual. The kind of careful casualness that people use when they're about to ask you for something they know they shouldn't. I found her standing in front of the closet, holding 2 different pairs of earrings up to her ears. Diamond studs and long silver dangles that caught the light. She was wearing a deep green dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her curves in ways that made my throat tight. She'd spent 2 hours on her makeup, a smoky eye that made her look like she was heading to a film premiere rather than Derek's engagement party. Derek, my college roommate. Derek, who was marrying a wonderful woman named Priya after 4 years of dating. Derek, who threw parties at his family's brownstone that always ran too late and got too loud. Which ones? Vanessa asked, turning her head side to side. The studs, I said. They're elegant. She frowned, setting down the studs and fastening the dangles instead. I think the long ones make more of a statement. I didn't ask what statement she was trying to make. I should have. Listen, she said, not meeting my eyes as she smoothed her dress over her hips. I need to talk to you about tonight. Okay. Ethan is going to be there. The name landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Ethan, her ex-boyfriend from before we met. The one she dated for 3 years, the one who'd ended things abruptly and without explanation. The one whose name still made her voice change slightly whenever it came up. I didn't know he was friends with Derek, I said carefully. He's not really. He's friends with Priya's brother. Small world. She laughed, but it was brittle. Anyway, I just found out he's coming, and I wanted to give you a heads up. Okay, thanks for telling me. She turned then, finally looking at me directly. Her eyes were calculating, measuring something I couldn't quite identify. I think it would be better if we acted like we're just friends tonight. Kept things casual. Less complicated. The words didn't register at first. They were so far outside the realm of what I expected her to say that my brain simply rejected them, sending them back for reprocessing. Just friends, I repeated. It's not a big deal. She waved her hand dismissively, the silver earrings swaying with the motion. It's just, Ethan and I didn't end well, and I don't want any drama. If he sees me with someone new, he might think I'm trying to make him jealous or something. It'll be awkward. I stared at her. We'd been together for 2.5 years. We lived together. I'd met her parents, she'd met mine. Last month, we talked about taking a trip to Portugal in the spring, maybe looking at apartments with a 2nd bedroom for the home office she wanted. And now she was asking me to pretend none of that existed because her ex-boyfriend might feel uncomfortable. You want me to pretend we're not together? I said slowly. So that Ethan won't think you're trying to make him jealous. When you say it like that, it sounds weird. She turned back to the mirror, adjusting her hair. I just don't want to deal with any messiness tonight. You understand, right? It's not about you. It's about managing the situation. Managing the situation. Like I was a variable in an equation she was trying to solve. Like our relationship was an inconvenience to be temporarily set aside. I thought about all the nights I'd held her when she couldn't sleep. The time I'd driven 4 hours through a snowstorm to be at her grandmother's funeral. The way I'd reorganized my entire life when she got the job offer across town, taking on a longer commute so she could have the shorter one. Something shifted in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something quieter. Something that felt like clarity. Okay, I said. She spun around, relief flooding her features. Really? You're not upset? No, I said, and I meant it. The word came out calm, detached, like I was commenting on the weather. If that's what you want, that's what we'll do. You're the best, Marcus. Seriously. She crossed the room and kissed my cheek quickly, a perfunctory gesture. I knew you'd understand. You always understand. I watched her finish getting ready, adding a final spritz of perfume that I didn't recognize. She hummed to herself, clearly pleased with how the conversation had gone, completely unaware that something fundamental had just changed. The tie I'd adjusted 6 times suddenly felt like it was strangling me. I loosened it slightly, then removed it entirely, tossing it onto the bed. "You're not wearing the tie?" Vanessa asked. "Decided to keep it casual," I said. "Just friends and all." She missed the edge in my voice entirely. Derek and Priya's brownstone was lit up like a beacon when we arrived, warm lights spilling from every window, music and laughter drifting out into the damp evening air. The rain had held off, leaving everything slick and glistening under the street lamps. We walked up the front steps together, but with a careful distance between us. No hand-holding, no arm around her waist. Just friends. Derek met us at the door, his face flushed with happiness and probably a few glasses of champagne. "Marcus, you made it!" He pulled me into a bear hug, clapping me hard on the back. "And Vanessa, you look stunning. Get in here, both of you." The party was already in full swing. I recognized maybe half the faces, old college friends, some of Derek's work colleagues, a smattering of Priya's family. I spotted Priya across the room, radiant in a gold sari, laughing at something her mother was saying. Vanessa touched my arm lightly. "I'm going to go say hi to Priya. You okay?" "Perfect," I said. "Go ahead." She disappeared into the crowd, and I watched her go. The green dress moved through the room like a searchlight, drawing glances from every direction. I noticed several men's heads turn as she passed. I noticed, too, the way her eyes scanned the room as she walked, searching for someone. Not me. I made my way to the bar. A folding table set up in the corner with an impressive array of bottles, and poured myself a whiskey, neat. The burn of it was grounding, a small anchor in a night that already felt surreal. "You look like a man who's contemplating either the meaning of life or the structural integrity of that bookshelf." I turned to find a woman standing beside me, her head tilted slightly as she studied me with obvious amusement. She was tall, with warm brown skin and natural hair twisted up in an elaborate style that looked effortlessly elegant. Her dress was simple, a deep burgundy that complemented her complexion, and she wore minimal jewelry, just small gold hoops in her ears. "The bookshelf definitely," I said. "It's holding up a lot of Dostoevsky. That's a serious, load-bearing responsibility." She laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. "I'm Nadia, Priya's cousin. Marcus, Derek's old roommate." "Ah, the famous Marcus. Derek talks about you constantly. Something about a road trip that involved a broken-down car and a very angry goat." I groaned. "He told you about the goat?" "In great detail. Apparently, it had a personal vendetta." "It did. I still have the scar." I pulled up my sleeve slightly to show the faint mark on my forearm. "Proof of my trauma." Nadia examined it with mock seriousness. "Battle wounds. Very distinguished." She poured herself a glass of wine, taking her time selecting the bottle. "So where's your other half? Derek mentioned you were bringing someone." The question shouldn't have stung, but it did. "Around somewhere," I said vaguely. "We're keeping things casual tonight." Something flickered across Nadia's face. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. She didn't press. "Well, casual Marcus, I hope you'll save a dance for me later." Derek's insisting on a proper dance floor experience, and I refuse to be stuck with my Uncle VJ. He thinks he invented the Macarena. Consider it done. She smiled and drifted off to greet some arriving guests, leaving me alone with my whiskey and my thoughts. I found a spot near the window, half hidden by a large fern, and watched the party unfold. It was a good vantage point. I could see most of the room without being obvious about it. I saw the moment Ethan arrived. He came in through the front door with the casual confidence of someone who knew exactly how good-looking he was. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of artfully disheveled hair that probably took 20 minutes to achieve. He wore a blazer over a t-shirt, the universal uniform of men who wanted to seem both sophisticated and laid-back. I saw Vanessa see him. Her whole body language changed. Shoulders back, chin up, a new electricity in her movements. She was suddenly laughing louder, gesturing more expansively, positioning herself in his sight line. And I saw Ethan not notice, or rather notice and dismiss. His gaze swept over her, acknowledged her presence with a brief nod, and moved on. He made his way across the room to join a group that included a petite blonde woman who immediately wrapped herself around his arm. A girlfriend, clearly. A girlfriend Vanessa hadn't known about. I watched the realization hit her from across the room. The way her smile froze, her hand tightening around her wine glass. The way she suddenly looked around the party with new, desperate eyes, searching for an anchor. Her eyes found mine. I raised my glass in a small salute and turned away. "So what's your story, Marcus?" Nadia had found me again. This time on the back patio where a few guests had escaped the crush inside. The air was cool and damp, carrying the earthy smell of recent rain. My story. Everyone at a party has a story. Usually it's boring, job, hobbies, favorite Netflix show. But you. She studied me with those perceptive eyes. You have the look of someone whose story took an unexpected turn tonight. I was quiet for a moment, considering how much to say. The whiskey had loosened something in me, and the night already felt like it existed outside normal time. "I've been with someone for 2.5 years," I said finally. "Tonight." She asked me to pretend we weren't together because her ex was going to be here. Nadia's eyebrows rose. "And you agreed?" "I did." "Why?" It was a good question. I'd been asking myself the same thing since the words, "okay," left my mouth. Because when she asked, I said slowly, I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. Like I'd been waiting for permission to stop trying, and she finally gave it to me. Nadia was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "That's the saddest thing I've heard all week." And my uncle VJ told me about his bunion surgery in excruciating detail. I laughed despite myself. "Worse than bunion surgery. That's quite the review. You deserve better than being someone's backup plan," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Anyone who can't see what they have right in front of them doesn't deserve to have it." We talked then, really talked, about our families, our fears, the dreams we'd quietly shelved and the ones we still clung to. She told me about her work as a civil rights attorney, the cases that kept her up at night, the small victories that made it all worthwhile. I told her about my job at the architecture firm, the building I was designing that I actually cared about, the way structures could tell stories if you knew how to read them. Hours passed like minutes. The party swirled around us, but we'd created our own small bubble, our own pocket of reality where nothing else existed. At some point, the DJ Derek had insisted on hiring started playing actual music, and people began to drift toward the makeshift dance floor in the living room. "I believe you promised me a dance," Nadia said. "Did I?" I was probably lying. "I'm a terrible dancer." "Then you'll fit right in. Come on." She grabbed my hand and pulled me inside, and I let her. The song was something upbeat and current, and Nadia threw herself into it with complete abandon, absolutely unconcerned with how she looked. Her joy was infectious. I found myself moving, laughing, feeling lighter than I had in months. We danced through 3 songs, then lost count entirely. At some point, a slow song came on, and she stepped closer, her hand resting on my shoulder, my hand finding her waist. We swayed together in the dim light, and I was acutely aware of her warmth, her scent, the way she fit against me. "This is unexpected," she murmured. "Bad unexpected?" "No." She looked up at me, her eyes dark and sincere. "Good unexpected. The best kind." From across the room, I felt eyes on us. I didn't need to look to know who was watching, but I didn't care. For the first time all night, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The party started winding down around midnight. Guests gathered their coats, made their goodbyes, promised to do this again soon. Derek and Priya stood at the door, still glowing with engagement bliss, thanking everyone for coming. I couldn't find Vanessa. After our dance, after the way she'd been staring at us, she'd disappeared. I assumed she'd found someone to commiserate with, or maybe she'd left entirely. I couldn't bring myself to care enough to look. I should probably go, Nadia said, checking her phone. I have an early meeting tomorrow with a client. Let me walk you out. We stepped onto the porch together, the cool night air a relief after the warmth inside. The street was quiet, most of the cars already gone. I'm glad I met you, Marcus, she said, turning to face me. Despite the circumstances. The circumstances were pretty terrible, I admitted. But this part wasn't. She smiled, and it transformed her whole face. Give me your phone. I handed it over and she typed in her number, then texted herself so she'd have mine. For when you figure out what you want, she said, handing it back. No pressure, no timeline, just an option. If you want it. I want it, I said, surprising myself with my certainty. I don't need to figure anything out. I already know. She studied my face for a long moment, then rose on her toes and kissed my cheek. But not the perfunctory peck Vanessa had given me earlier. This was soft, deliberate, a promise. Good night, Marcus. Good night, Nadia. I watched her walk to her car, watched the taillights disappear around the corner, then went back inside to collect my jacket. The brownstone was nearly empty now, just Derek and Priya and a few close friends helping clean up. I found my jacket draped over a chair in the living room and shrugged it on. Marcus. Derek appeared at my elbow, his expression cautious. Vanessa left about an hour ago. She seemed upset. Is everything okay? It will be, I said. Thanks for a great party, Derek. Congratulations again. You and Priya are perfect together. He searched my face, clearly wanting to ask more, but something in my expression must have told him not to. He just clapped me on the shoulder and let me go. The drive home was quiet, the streets empty, the city washed clean by the rain that had finally arrived. I drove slowly, in no hurry to reach the apartment, to face what was waiting for me there. Because something was waiting. I could feel it, a reckoning hanging in the air like the promise of thunder. The apartment was dark when I arrived. For a moment I thought Vanessa might not be there at all, that she'd gone somewhere else, maybe stayed with a friend. But then I saw the light under the bedroom door, the shadow of movement within. I hung up my jacket, poured myself a glass of water, took my time. The nervous energy from earlier was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Resolution, maybe, acceptance. The bedroom door opened, and Vanessa emerged. She changed out of the green dress into sweatpants and one of my old t-shirts, a gesture of domesticity that felt false now, a costume she was putting on. Her makeup was streaked, her eyes red-rimmed. You're back, she said. I'm back. I saw you. Her voice cracked. With that woman, dancing, touching her. You looked like... She couldn't finish the sentence. Like what? I asked calmly. Like I was having a good time? Like I was enjoying myself? Like you'd forgotten I existed? The irony was so thick I could taste it. That's interesting, I said. Because earlier tonight you specifically asked me to act like you didn't exist. Like we were just friends. Like 2.5 years meant nothing. That's not... I didn't mean... She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I made a mistake, Marcus. I was stupid. I thought if Ethan saw me with you, it would be awkward, and I just wanted everything to be smooth. You wanted everything to be smooth, I repeated. For Ethan. So you asked your boyfriend of 2.5 years to pretend he was just your friend. To stand aside. To make himself invisible so you could... What? What were you hoping would happen, Vanessa? She had no answer. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we weren't saying. He has a girlfriend, she finally whispered. Did you know? He showed up with some blonde and he didn't even look at me. I spent all night trying to get his attention, and he didn't care. And you... Her voice turned accusatory. You were supposed to be there for me. You were supposed to make this easier. I was supposed to make it easier for you to pursue your ex-boyfriend while I waited in the wings like a good understudy? That's not fair. None of this is fair. I sat down heavily on the couch, suddenly exhausted. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not that you asked me to pretend. It's that I wasn't surprised. I've been pretending for months, Vanessa. Pretending everything was fine. Pretending I didn't notice the way you pull away from me. Pretending I couldn't see that you were somewhere else every time we were together. That's not true. It is true. And tonight, when you asked me to act like we were just friends, you finally gave me permission to stop pretending. To stop waiting for you to see me. To stop hoping that someday I'd be enough. She stared at me, her face pale. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. The words came out steady, certain. I'm saying that somewhere between you asking me to be invisible and you expecting me to comfort you because your plan failed, I realized I've been alone in this relationship for a long time. Maybe always. You can't just, we have a life together. We have an apartment together. We have habits together. But a life. I shook my head. A life requires two people who are actually present. Who actually want to be there. And you haven't wanted to be here in a very long time. The tears were flowing freely now, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I love you, Marcus. I know I messed up, but I love you. No, I said gently. You love what I provide. The stability, the certainty, the person who's always there to catch you. But me, the actual person, you forgot I existed a long time ago. Tonight just made it official. She begged. She bargained. She cycled through every stage of grief in the span of an hour. And through it all, I felt strangely peaceful, like I was watching the scene from a great distance. When she finally exhausted herself, curled up on the couch with her tears soaking into the cushions, I went to the bedroom and started packing. Not everything, just enough for a few days. A change of clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the essentials. I'd figure out the rest later, the logistics, the division of belongings, all the practical detritus of a life being taken apart. For now, I just needed to leave. Where will you go? She asked, her voice small and broken. I'll figure it out. Marcus. Good night, Vanessa. I walked out the door without looking back. The hotel room was impersonal and sterile. Exactly what I needed. I lay on the too-firm bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the grief to hit, the regret, the second-guessing. Instead, I felt light, empty but in a good way, like a house that had been cleared of all its clutter, waiting to be filled with new things. My phone buzzed. A text from Nadia. I hope you're okay. Whatever happens next, remember. You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you. Don't settle for less. I typed back. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. And I won't settle. Not anymore. Her response came quickly. Good. Because I meant what I said. No pressure, no timeline. But the option's there. Whenever you're ready. How about coffee? Tomorrow? 10 a.m.? A pause. Then, I'd like that. There's a place on 5th and Madison. Good espresso. Better conversation. It's a date. Is it? I smiled at the phone, feeling something unfamiliar. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. The sense that the story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. Yeah. It is. 6 months later, I would think back on that night as the turning point, the moment everything changed. The before and after of my life. Nadia and I took things slow. Coffee became lunch, became dinner, became weekends spent exploring the city together. Finding new favorite places, building new memories. She never pushed, never pressured. She just showed up, consistently and completely, in ways I'd forgotten people could. I ran into Vanessa once, about 3 months after everything fell apart. She was at a coffee shop I used to frequent, sitting alone, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. She'd lost weight. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She looked tired and lost, and I felt a pang of something. Not regret, exactly, but compassion. We'd shared 2.5 years. That meant something even if it hadn't meant enough. Hi, Marcus. Hi, Vanessa. A pause. You look good. Thanks. How are you? I'm. She trailed off, her eyes dropping to the table. I'm working on it. Good. That's good. Another pause. The air between us was heavy with all the things we could say and wouldn't. I'm sorry, she finally said. For what it's worth. I'm really sorry. I know. So am I. I ordered my coffee to go and left her sitting there. It was the last time we ever spoke. The morning sun was streaming through Nadia's apartment windows, casting long golden rectangles across the hardwood floors. I was in her kitchen, attempting to make pancakes. A culinary adventure that was going about as well as expected. You're supposed to flip them before they burn, Nadia said, appearing in the doorway. She was still in her pajamas, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf, a coffee mug cradled in her hands. She looked effortlessly beautiful and, more importantly, she looked like home. I know the theory, I said. The execution needs work. She laughed, crossing the room to bump me gently aside with her hip. Move over. Let a professional handle this. I watched her take over, her movements efficient and confident. The pancakes began to take proper shape under her care. You know, she said, not looking up from the griddle. When I met you at that party, you looked like a man who just realized his house was on fire. That's surprisingly accurate. And now, she glanced at me, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I thought about it. The apartment I'd found, the one with the big windows and the good light. The project at work that I'd finally gotten approved, the building design that actually mattered. The way I woke up each morning without the weight of dread, without the constant low-level anxiety of trying to be enough for someone who wasn't looking. And Nadia, most of all Nadia, who really saw me exactly as I was, who didn't need me to be invisible or convenient, who showed up, fully and completely, every single day. Now, I said, wrapping my arms around her from behind, I feel like I finally found my way out of the smoke. She leaned back into me, her body warm and solid. That's a very dramatic metaphor for a Sunday morning. I'm a dramatic person. Haven't you noticed? I've noticed. She turned in my arms, the spatula still in her hand. Her eyes were soft, full of something that made my chest ache in the best possible way. I've noticed everything about you, Marcus, and I like all of it. I kissed her then, slow and deep, tasting coffee and possibility. The pancakes burned again, but neither of us cared. Later, much later, as we lay tangled together on her couch, the remains of our salvaged breakfast on the coffee table, she asked me a question. Do you ever regret it? The way things ended, I considered. I thought about Vanessa, about the night she'd asked me to pretend, about all the months I'd spent trying to hold together something that was already broken. No, I said finally. I regret not seeing it sooner. I regret all the time I spent hoping things would change instead of accepting what they were. But the ending, I pulled her closer, feeling her heartbeat against my chest. The ending led me here. So no, I don't regret that at all. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad she told you to act like friends that night. Yeah, because if she hadn't, you might still be there, playing your part, waiting for permission to be seen. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at me with those serious, perceptive eyes. And I would have missed out on all of this. All of the burnt pancakes and terrible dancing? All of the burnt pancakes and terrible dancing, she agreed. And everything else. Everything that matters. I reached up to touch her face, tracing the curve of her cheek with my thumb. You know what I learned that night? I said. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually the best thing that could happen to you. Sometimes you have to lose what you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. That's very philosophical. I have my moments. She smiled, leaning down to kiss me softly. You have a lot of moments. I plan to be there for all of them. Outside, the city hummed with its usual Sunday rhythm. Church bells in the distance, children laughing in the park across the street. The steady pulse of life continuing on. Inside, in this small apartment with its good light and its better company, I felt something I'd almost forgotten was possible. Happiness. Real, uncomplicated, fully present happiness. The kind you can only find when someone actually sees you. The kind that's worth waiting for. 6 months before, she told me to act like we were just friends. Instead, I found out what it really meant to be seen. And in the end, that made all the difference. Thank you for watching all the way through. There's another story to your left screen. You'll enjoy it more than this one.